Week 9 in college football here at SBR Forum Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We're talking right now with the very popular returning guest, Doug Upstone from sports-watch.com. Doug, thanks for coming back this week.
Hey, it's been my pleasure, Peter. Things are going pretty well. The college was not quite what I'd hoped for last week, but there was a couple things that went against us early, and the teams just couldn't really compete. But, hey, that's betting in college football.
Yeah, hey, it happens. Yeah, and I noticed you got some bad weather on the Ohio State game. That was kind of bad luck. But no, I will say one thing. There's one thing about you, Doug. Like, all these cappers get slammed left and right in the threads, on the forum, on YouTube. Even when they pick winners, they get slammed. But you don't get slammed that much at all, and you have a bunch of people who just express love for you. It's very strange. You're like an anomaly amongst touts.
I don't know what to say specifically about that. I just try and be myself, and I think maybe that comes across in terms of not trying to be something that I'm not, and maybe trying to have a little fun along the way too. I think people maybe appreciate that as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even people who are hated are just being themselves. It's just that who they are is something that people hate. But so just being yourself isn't something that everyone can do and just get the love that you get. But I guess it works. Yeah.
So far, so good. I think it's still going to boil down to picking winners, though.
Yes, it does. And that's obviously a big component because your record last year is phenomenal and your record this year is positive as well. So, all right, let's start with the first game. You want to talk about Temple at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a 6.5-point home favorite. The total is 49.5. I'm thinking under on this one. I did actually bet the under a little bit on the opener. Pitt, they have not been that great this year. And it hasn't been just like one game, what was a clunker. They've sort of like repeatedly underperformed. And Temple, they're not necessarily that great, but they did beat UConn on the road. They beat South Florida. So they look like the kind of team that can, reliably, that can be dependent on to hang tough with the bottom tier Big East teams. So I'm looking at this as being more likely than not being a close game. My guess would be your pick is going to be Temple plus 6.5.
Well, let's take a look at this, Peter. Temple, is very methodical on offense.
Yes.
They seldom create big plays and are really dependent on moving the chains and winning the field position battle, which they did for a half last week against Rutgers and leading 10-0. But once the Scarlet Knights got going on offense and Temple got out of their comfort zone, their 120th ranked passing offense was a major detriment, and they were destroyed 35-10. Now, quarterback Chris Croyer, who has started each game for the Owls this year, has only completed more than 50% of his passes once in 6 games. His inaccuracy has opened the door for backup quarterback Juice Granger to see the field more often. But if you watch the game like I did last week, he certainly did not impress, and Temple receivers really lack speed and cannot create separation. Now, granted, as you said, Pittsburgh is not an explosive offensive team, averaging 26.4 points a game, but at least they're capable of big plays, as they had against Louisville when they scored 35 points. And they're 8th in the country in yards per pass attempt at 9.3, giving the impression, at least, that they're capable of doing more. Now, Pittsburgh does not beat itself and has only committed 3 turnovers in their last 5 games, proving that the players are grasping what their coach, Paul Chryst, has been preaching to them. Now, Pittsburgh played with this interest last week in their winning cover at Buffalo. However, with a chance at home to get back to 500, that has to be a real selling point for the coaches. And I think the offense is capable of building a working margin. I can see Pittsburgh building a 10 to 14 point lead in this game, which for Temple is like climbing Mount Everest. With Pittsburgh a sharp 10-3 against the spread the last few years in the second half of the season, I will back the Panthers to win by 2 touchdowns or possibly even more, Peter.
Wow. I mean, I'll tell you this, one of our other cappers from Game Day Insiders, TJ Pemberton, he took the Temple-Rutgers game last week, and he predicted Rutgers to get a blowout. My sense, though, is that Rutgers is a far superior team, that Pittsburgh is just an unreliable team this year. I mean, they lost to Youngstown State, then they had a bunch of other losses and clunkers, but you think that that was a little bit illusory and that they're better than what their record's been so far?
Yeah, I would say this is more of a play against Temple than it is to say that I love Pittsburgh. In that regard, Temple, like I say, that offense, I mean, it's a miracle that seemingly that they even get passing yards. You mentioned the Connecticut game that they won. In that game in the fourth quarter, they had 4th and 1 on 3 separate occasions in the fourth quarter, and they never made it.
Yeah.
They can't move the ball, and that's what their problem is. Like I say, if they can control the tempo, keep everything low key, they can do it. But I think Pittsburgh, they're certainly not great, but they do have some explosiveness, which Temple has none. So as long as Pittsburgh doesn't turn the ball over, I see them just walking away with this victory.
All right, so then maybe also a play on Temple team total under might be good, because right now that should be about 21.5. So maybe a Temple team total under play as well.
Absolutely, yeah, because I think the total last I saw was 49.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that certainly would be the case, because with that spread that sets up to be like a 20, at least based on that anyways, 28 to 21 final score. And I'm having a hard time picking Temple to get 21 points.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doug. Great preview once again. Thanks.